Hello, my Aloha tribe, and welcome to the Aloha Perspective, where you get a little bit of something and a whole lot of everything. Happy Tuesday. Clearly, I forgot what day it was. I don't know why, right? Monday wasn't that bad. Monday was actually really good, so not sure why I'm avoiding it. However, good morning. So I'm just going to jump right in. As you know, I've been pulling the affirmators cards, and my mind is squirreling this hard this morning. But I pulled in one of the affirmator cards, but I'm going to read it after the thing I talk about today. Because last night I did some heavy journaling. I mean, it was some journaling that so needed to be done. And I didn't think it needed to be done. I mean, I was so certain that I had nothing to journal, that I was good to go. And then last night, it just, my body knows, right? And it was just sitting there going, no, I got to do something. So I have these cards called the Threads of Fate, and they're just oracle. They're not even really oracle cards as much as they are guidance cards. Kind of more, I call them more like journal prompts. And I was inspired to go back to an old journal, and it turns out I literally have one sitting right here. And so when I did that, I was kind of like, oh, okay, I'm going to read through it. Well, I just happened to open up to the same page that was a year ago yesterday. And it turns out last year I also did this project, the one that I told you I do 117 days, from the time my mom was diagnosed to the time she passed away. And the reason that started was, how can life change, in just under 4 months? Because for us, life changed hard in 4 months. My mom went from being, at a party, having fun, blah, 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 to all of a sudden having all these little different issues. And then finally, towards the end of May, being diagnosed with her pancreatic cancer, which was at a terminal state, which, in my personal opinion, until they find a cure for this thing, is pretty much anything beyond 2. But you never know, right? Because there are people who find it. So, who find it early or who survive it. And to those people, my hat's off to you, because that's amazing. But my mom's was literally so far advanced that, come on. Advanced stage 4 is basically terminal. So, in that time I did that. So I didn't realize I did this last year. And when I read back, I have changed so much since then. I've changed so much since last year. And not so much who I've become or who I've uncovered, but more along the lines of what I've let go of. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to sit down and, because I told Sibling last night, I said, do you have any ideas which cards I should pull so I can get some journaling done, get that prompt thing going. And she had no clue. I'm not even sure she knows what cards I have. But when I saw that I also pulled these, from this same deck last year. And so I thought, well, I guess that's my sign, right? It's like I looked back, and there was something, and there was a theme in there about trusting the process, and about surrendering, and the difference between surrendering and trusting. Surrendering to the process and trusting the process, to me, they're the same, but they're very different. And so I pulled the trust card from the deck because I really thought that would be something really good to kind of go over today. And, because I know a lot of people are in different parts of their journey, but trusting and surrendering is literally the biggest part of the entire journey, from beginning, middle to the end, and everything in between all of those things. Because there are going to be the things in between all of those things. There's going to be the things between the beginning and the middle, and then the middle and the end. But when you surrender and you learn to trust the process, you can make those things not necessarily go faster, because, the amount of healing you need to do and the amount of time it's going to take is all up to you. I've seen people, start after me and blow right by me. I've seen myself start before other people, and I blew right by them. And I've seen myself start with other people, and we're still kind of on the same path at the same time. So it's not a competition. It's, don't look at somebody else's healing journey and go, well, why are they blah, blah, blah. You can ask them, say, hey, what are you doing? And they might say, well, I surrendered to the process and I trusted it. And I get it. Depending on what you've been through in life, surrendering and trusting may not be easy. I tended to have to control a lot of things in my life because if I knew what was going to happen, I wouldn't be upended. And, you know, what I'd been through was not something I could control. It was not something that I was able to, you know, to just kind of say, you know, until later in life when I was like, you know, no. But when I was young, it was not something I could control. And so I wish it was, and people will sit there and go, well, you know, and there's always these things. And there was, you know, there's always the things. But, you know, I don't want to go into that right now because that's not what this topic is about. This topic is about trusting and surrendering, regardless of what happened to you in your past. I'm not minimizing that. What I'm saying is that we all have different things that happen to us. How we move through them is how we get to the other side of whatever it is we need to move through. So, one of the hardest things for me on this journey has been to trust and surrender. And so I really like this card. So I'm going to read it and then we're going to talk about it. Okay. So trust. This card indicates a time where letting go of your human thinking and having faith will serve you. Okay, just really quick. I have to say, I read a different card yesterday, one that I pulled over the weekend, and it said the exact same thing. And the way it put it was, you cannot put, you know, a thread that has a head on it will not fit through the eye of the needle. And that's true, right? If you ever watch somebody, you'll either see them smoothing it out or, you know, sometimes, well, I just lick mine because, you know, it smooths it out at the end. And you'll find people doing that because, you know, when it's got all this stuff hanging off, it's hard to get through there, right? Unless you use a needle threader, which it's not how I was taught to do it. So I do it my own way. I do it the way I was taught. And, you know, but I love that saying, you cannot fit a thread with a head through the eye of a needle. And it's true. And what it's saying is that sometimes we have to let go of our thinking, you know, whatever our mind is yammering at us, and just allow whatever to happen. Because when we do that, we're able to go into the flow. We're able to surrender to that. So surrendering to me in a way is letting go of that head, right? So you can fit through the eye of the needle. So let's start over. This card indicates a time where letting go of your human thinking and having faith will serve you. People can confuse surrender and trust, lumping them into the same idea. However, these are different things and require different parts of us. Surrendering often feels dark and like you're submerged, unable to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Its lesson is a teaching in rebirth. The rebirth can only happen when you surrender to winter without expecting spring to come around. It is a lesson in adapting. Trust is a more intuitive process. There is an element of vision, of knowing what is possible, of seeing the potential and trusting that you will get there when you do not know how you will. It is trusting that the universe will provide the resources and illuminate the path if you show up for it. Reflect around your history with trust. Do you have evidence of how trusting can bring about solutions? If not, at what point in the process do you give up? So, in my personal opinion, I think trusting will always bring about solutions. It may not be the solutions you want or expected, but that's to me where the surrendering comes in, the not knowing, right? The darkness in the rebirth. So you can kind of look at, we'll use the example of the lotus flower, right? We talked about that last week and how the lotus flower, you know, it kind of grows in the mud and the muck and the, you know, below the surface. It grows in the dark. And that's kind of surrendering, right? This seed or this vine or, you know, I'm not even sure what the bottom of a lotus looks like, but wherever the lotus grows from, it's trusting, it's surrendering to the darkness. And I'm not saying surrender to your darkness. What it's saying is it's surrendering to whatever situation you're in so that you can see it from a different perspective. So surrender and trust are kind of like twins. They have to go together because this seed that this lotus comes from is surrendering to everything around it, but it knows, it's trusting that one day it's going to rise above the surface and bloom into this beautiful flower. I want to take this next thing I'm going to say a little, I'm going to try to explain it because I don't want it to come out wrong. Because to me, if it does and somebody hears it and they hear it wrong, it can be dangerous. But I had to surrender to my darkness. And I don't mean my darkness like, I'm going to go out and stab somebody. No. When I say darkness, we all have this dark part of ourselves. It's the shadow side. Okay. I had to surrender to this shadow side of myself. But, it's kind of the same as, to me, in my perspective, it is kind of the same as a darkness, or as the, the darkness that you're sitting in. Because the shadow work is where all the icky stuff lives. It's where it's kind of, think of it as your internal, dump site, right? Where all the trash trucks go. It's bringing all this crap in. It's dumping all this shit all in here. And, you're just sitting there going like, oh my God, I don't want to live here. I don't want to be in this. I'm not Oscar the Grouch. Living in a trash can is not my idea of living. So you kind of have to surrender that, right? Oscar the Grouch loves where he lives. He's happy. He's happy as a clam. Coming out of his little trash can and going, I'm a little green monster and I love it in here. And he's, obviously he's grouchy. But think, if you want to put it in terms of that, think of it like that. Do you want to be Oscar the Grouch or do you want to be Big Bird? So there's a balance in between, because sometimes Big Bird can be a bit much, right? Like, oh, but Oscar. No, there's a middle ground, okay? And when we surrender, though, when we surrender to our own little Oscar the Grouches in that big dump site, we start weeding through what needs to be gotten rid of. Now, here's the thing. A lot of landfills have become mountains, right? We built mountains out of our crap. But these mountains can be fruitful. They can be prosperous. So you can take these horrible things that you've been through and you can heal it. And in my case, I've turned around and started this show. And, for a while I was journaling and blogging online about these things, and you can try to help people with it, or you can take it to push yourself forward. For me, doing this show is kind of pushing myself forward. It's reminding me that I have the gift of a lot of speech, motor mouth. I could yammer all day, but it's a reminder that when we surrender to this scary part that we don't want to think about, we are now in control. We can heal that. We can say, hey, you know what? I'm in charge now. What happened to me in the past, what happened to me, whether it's years ago or yesterday, I'm in control of that, and I can make myself better. And it may not happen overnight, right? I mean, healing takes time. And when it's something traumatic, that can take a lot of time. I mean, it may even require professional help. And, I am the first person to say therapy is an amazing place. You don't have to everyone thinks that therapy is for depression. No, therapy is for people who are kind of stuck, whether it's in your own mental health state or just in life, and it's a safe space to talk to somebody who is not associated to you, family, friend, or otherwise, to just lay it on the line. And sometimes they give you advice. I love my therapist because my therapist gave me advice, and she shouldn't say advice. Okay, she kind of guided me, but she also reminded me of my strengths. She reminded me that when I came into therapy, I had all these tools, but for me, I was stuck. And when she graduated me, I freaked out. And that's when I figured, oh my God, I have to figure out how to journal because I got to get all this out. But it turns out my journaling was something totally different. So in less than a month, in just a couple of weeks, it'll be the 10th anniversary of my mom passing. And that has been weighing heavy on my mind. I don't know why. I mean, it weighs heavy on my mind every year. But all year, all I could think of was, I can't believe it's been 10 years. And then 10 short months after that will be Sissy's 10 years, which is still blowing my mind as well. And it's still hard for me to wrap my head around either of them being gone. And, not to be able to physically hug them or, talk to them in person or go on my midnight drives with Sissy like I used to, or take an early drive when Mom came to visit because she wanted to know what a midnight drive was like. Took my dad on one too. He's like, actually, this is kind of fun. So, but when we learn to surrender and we stop fighting something, we learn to trust the process. And I'm going to see if I can put this in a way that won't seem so like, oh my God, so freaky. When I learned to surrender, I wasn't surrendering to all the things around me that was happening. I was surrendering to what happened to me. Can I change it? No. Does it hurt me? Yes. Did it cause triggers for a long time? Yes. Does it still cause potential triggers? Yeah, it does. But by surrendering to all those things, by surrendering to what I had gone through, I learned the tools, how to pick myself up. So when I am triggered, it's not, this, explosion of craziness that would sometimes come out of me, or, just that blind rage and just yelling in every direction because, I didn't feel seen and I didn't feel heard, even though I was seen and I was heard. And once I learned how to surrender, and for me, that was doing shadow work. Shadow work was very hard. I am telling you now, if you've been through some harrowing things in your life, if you're going to start shadow work, have a buddy. I would prefer people go seek professional help. You don't have to leave your home. They have it online. They have, all these different apps now that, kind of tend to the people that don't want to be seen coming out of a therapist's office. I have no shame. And I'll be honest with you, when I was in the waiting room, because of the particular medical plan I'm on, because I'm with Kaiser, and Kaiser's kind of all encompassing, but I'm sitting on a floor with the different people in the waiting room, and we're all there to see a therapist, and there's no stigma. I don't know if they felt stigmatized, but I didn't. I'm just kind of like, hey, I know I'm here because I know I need to get better, and this person's going to help me do it. And sometimes that's how we need to look at it. I'm the kind of person that doesn't like to ask for help. I am learning now that it is much easier to ask for help than to just either hem and haw or say, well, and then wait for someone to offer. Just ask. It is not that hard. It seems hard because you spend so much time trying to be the person that, takes care of you, that you forget we're surrounded by other people who can take care of us. It's good to have that skill. It's good to have that skill where you can take care of yourself. But if there's people around, allow them to help you. It's not that hard. One of you out there who will be watching this now or later knows exactly what I'm talking about. You feel seen, don't you? Maybe not in a good way. Yes, I'm talking exactly to older sibling. That's right, older sibling. Who I know is watching right now. I don't mind calling her out. She's always funny about it. She's very open and she's a good sport. But when we learn to surrender, we can open our way to trust. And as I mentioned, circling back, when I learned to surrender, I was surrendering to my inner child. And I had to go deep, and I had to do the shadow work. I followed a Carl Jung type of plan. He was not the father of psychotherapy, which would be, Freud. sorry, Sigmund Freud, which was Freud. But, he did study under Freud for a while and worked with Freud for a while. But they had differing views on how, of different treatments. And I don't know that it tore them apart, but it kind of strained their work relationship. And I think it moved them apart. I still have to read my book on Carl Jung, but I know, but I'm laughing because if you know me, you know me. It's like, I love books and I love collecting books, but then I get so distracted and so squirrely that I forget to read the books that I own. And I have a lot of books. There's one of my favorite stores is in Colorado. I know I'm sidetracking, is in Colorado. It's this tiny little, this guy and his girlfriend or wife, they own this bookshop, and it's just kind of like a hodgepodge of all kinds of used books, and I love it. And then sibling and I were watching a show on on 60 Minutes the other night where they have a whole town of bookstores. I know, I'm like, oh, we got to go there. And it's like, yeah, let's bring home more books that I don't read. So, and I love reading, but like I said, it doesn't dawn on me, right? And I even have a Kindle, and my Kindle has a lot of books on it. I know. But you know what? I'm going to tell you this right now. When I do go on vacation or something, and I do have the opportunity to read, bringing my Kindle means I can read more than one book, because sometimes I blow through books and like nobody's business. So you know what, I will promise you right now, I will make it a habit to read at least 20 minutes a day. Okay, that is going to be my thing. I'm going to read at least 20 minutes a day until I'm back in the habit of reading all my books. That's going to be my goal, to read all those books and you know what? The shelf goes way out. Not way out, but you can only see like maybe a third of it. There's 2/3 more you can't see. So what does that tell you? And there's books behind my head too. So I know Shelly Marie has a book buying addiction that she needs to start reading. But anyways, I'm sorry, circling back. I followed the shadow work for Carl Jung, and he's really kind of the pioneer of shadow work. So when I first started doing shadow work and I first looked it up, I thought it was a metaphysical thing. I really did, because you know, metaphysical teachings talk a lot about shadow work, going in deep. And then I Googled it and I'm like, oh, well, who's this guy? And I fell in love with Carl Jung. And what's kind of fun, right, is when you look back at Freud and Jung, and you know, Carl Jung lived into like the early, like I think to the 60s. Okay, so you're talking about how young psychotherapy is, because it's only been in the last maybe 140, 50 years that it's really, or maybe even less than that it's been out there, where people have needed that. You know, some people would just, I mean, it's not the first time. In the Hawaiian tradition, there is a thing called the Ho'oponopono. And the Ho'oponopono, which I am certified in, is an old tradition of when there is an issue in the family, everybody's sitting down and talking, but they have to talk until they work it out. So it's more of a spiritual type of thing. And it's about going deep and finding out the root of the problem so that it kind of weeds out the root of that problem. And you don't have to worry about it anymore. Because a lot of times we'll talk, you know, like this morning I asked my dad how he was. I'm fine. But I could hear the tone in the text. So I'm like, yeah, he's fine, because he sounds annoyed that I'm asking. So, and with the sounding annoyed that I'm asking, it takes energy to be annoyed. That's what I told him. I said, well, you must be fine, because it takes energy to be annoyed. So, you know, because he hasn't been feeling well they changed his meds, he changed back, and so it's rebalancing for him right now. But it's, you know, it's a process. So it's a process, especially when your previous meds kind of just, you know, blow out a couple of tires on that car, right? I mean, it's bad enough when you have one flat tire, but when you have a few flat tires, not fun. So, you know, it's just a matter of getting back on track and getting, you know, remotivated and doing all these things. So, you know, there's that. And I probably shouldn't have shared that because it was my dad, but hopefully he doesn't watch this. So anyways, in the shadow work, I knew I had to get into the inner child, because I knew that's what was hurting. And it turns out my inner child was way more stronger than I thought it was, or she was. My little floof, that's what I named my inner child. My little floof was way stronger than I was. And I realized it was because she got me through everything up until that moment when I discovered her. But in my mind, she was still in the corner, just kind of, not cowering, but just kind of sitting there with the knees to the chest, going like, just waiting, but sad, because it took, and I don't think it's because it took that long, but because there was things that needed to be healed. And when I look back at it now, the vision in my head of my little floof in the corner in the dark, just sitting there with the knees up to her chest, all I can think of is maybe she was just tired. You know, I noticed at the end of my healing how tired I've been. And I think it's because I tried to control everything so long in my life. I tried to be strong in a way that was not healthy for me. Strength is asking for help. Strength is, you know, looking deep inside and healing these parts of yourself that need to be healed. Strength is looking inside, not knowing what you're looking for. And, you know, kind of Indiana Jonesing yourself, right? You got to do your own archaeological expeditions within yourself to find all these things that might be causing problems. I believe when you do a live on Twitter, it stays on there. So my friend, starting a new 13, she goes under the name Healing. She did a show yesterday, I believe, that was about intergenerational trauma. Sometimes it's that. Sometimes you could be picking up on things that you've learned from the people that came before you, maybe a parent or a grandparent. And that doesn't make them bad people. These are things that we pass down and that we have to learn to break the cycle. And, for, certain people in my family, my mom, I'm just going to talk about my mom. My mom had this thing that's like, well, if it happens, or even my dad, they just push it down and that's it. And they just deal with it later, or they don't deal with it at all. And sometimes that works for people, but that didn't work for me. That doesn't work for me, because whatever I push down, if it's trauma based, it did come flying back up. And if you ever saw that game, Perfection, where you have to try to put in all the pieces, you push it down, you put in all the pieces, and if you don't make it in time, it pops all the pieces out. That's kind of what would happen, but way worse. Okay, like, Shelley Marie Suvius, right? Mount Shellsuvius. And it wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty. I'm not gonna lie. I could be an asshole sometimes when I was in my pain. When my pain and my mental health would have a flare up, because I didn't have the tools, because I didn't have, the strength that I have now. Or I had the strength then, but it was a different kind of strength. It was more like, using the muscle instead of the brain, right? Every person who works out knows you got to use both. You got to be, you work until, you need to stop, or you do certain things and you just allow yourself to get to, your point. But then there's other people that just think they can solve things with a pow, and you can't. But that was me. I would get angry. I didn't hit anybody, but the verbal abuse can be so much worse, because those can really leave the scars. And I could be mean. And I could be mean to myself, and I would lash out at anything around me or anyone around me, and I'll be honest with you, poor older sibling. I've talked about this in the past. Poor older sibling, she got the brunt of it, but she never gave up on me, because she knew. She knew somewhere in there was a Shelley Marie that you know and love today was buried in there under all this pain and all this muck and all this stuff, because she had had her own things go on in her own life. She had to deal with therapy. She had to deal with depression. And before you ask, yes, I've always had permission. Sibling says she's an open book and I can share her story. There's certain things I will not share because I'm not sure I'm allowed to. I should ask her about that. But, also, I don't want to trigger anyone. And there will be times when I do talk about things where somebody might get triggered. But in that moment, it might be that it is a message somebody needs to hear. That is not that moment right now. Right now, we're talking about how to surrender so we can learn how to trust. It's scary, or it can be scary. For me, when I say it's scary, if I'm talking like I know what I'm talking about, it's the stuff I've been through. So I do know about that. But not everybody's journey is the same. So it can be scary. But it can be elating. It can be mind-blowing. It can be, wow, it's like climbing up a mountain and getting to the top and looking down and going, wow, I will never climb Mount Everest in my life. It is not a goal I want. I always thought it'd be fun to go to base camp, right? But because of my heart at too high of an altitude, it starts to beat really, really fast, no matter what shape I'm in. So, because your body has to work more, right? That's why it takes so long to get to the top, because they have to acclimate you at certain stages. But I think to even just be in the presence of that mountain would be phenomenal. But imagine being one of those people that climbs to the top. I'm not saying you have to climb to the top, but think about it. Everest is such an impossible mountain to climb, but people have managed to do it. I told sibling, I said, maybe I can cheat and just take a helicopter to the top, but that would probably kill me. I'd probably pop because it's so high up in altitude. But I'm just kidding. Sometimes they just say stupid things. Go with it. Just ignore it, I should say. But think of it as that mountain. The mountain seems impossible to climb until you start doing it. And it could be any mountain. Maybe there's a mountain by your house. Maybe there's a trail that you've wanted to do. Maybe there's, maybe there's an exercise regimen. You're like, I just want to get to this point. My problem in the past used to be, I love to exercise, but I want results like that. But I've been exercising consistently for since last Thursday. I only do it on weekdays because my body needs the rest on the weekends. But I've been consistent. And today I did a harder workout, and I was proud of myself. I was hot for a while, but I was like, you know what? I did it. I did it. And when you're plus size, not always easy to get up off the floor. But I thought, you know what? I don't care. I will figure it out because this is something I want to do for myself. You know, I have Bestie Bro from Another Mo helping me, you know, making sure I stay on track. He makes me share because we both have Apple Watches, he makes me share my workout. So we're friends now on the activity app. But you know what? I like it because it keeps me honest and it keeps me motivated. And you know, he checks in every couple of days, and that's good. You know, that's what family does, right? We check on one another and we make sure that the other one's okay. So when you go out there today in this world, just practice on something small, okay? Maybe you're driving to work. Maybe you're stuck in traffic. Maybe somebody cuts you off. Surrender to that moment. Is there anything you can do about it? No. Are you going to get mad about it? You could. Are you going to just say, well, at least, you know, I'm okay? You could. And if you do get mad about it and you know, I'm not going to lie. I used to be this way where I would let it ruin my day. Sometimes I am not perfect on the freeway. Okay. I would like to say I am a decent driver. I try not to be an asshole when I drive. But there are people out there who forget other people are on the road. Sometimes I swear at them, it's like, oh, you got to be effing kidding me, or you're an a-hole, or whatever. But then I let it go, you know. So I'm kind of in my own way. That's not something I'm recommending. I'm just saying, for me, it's like I surrender to that moment. I realize, okay, but you know what? Do I want it to ruin my day? No. So I'm going to just keep going. Just going to keep going on with my day. And I do. You know, and it's kind of like, you know, and sometimes when they almost try to kill you, it might stick with you a little bit, but surrender to that moment and just say, you know what, I'm so happy and grateful that myself and my car, or myself and whatever vehicle you're in, or whatever, even if you're just walking or whatever that moment entails, I'm just so happy and grateful that I'm okay. And if you have passengers, that we're all okay. Sometimes that's a simple surrender. I'm so happy and grateful that everything turned out well, or turned out as it should. Not everything's going to go our way. It's life, right? But if someone gives you lemonade, make lemons. If someone gives you lemons, make lemonade, right? That's the old saying. If you're handed lemons, make lemonade. If you don't like lemonade, I don't know, make a lemon tart, make a lemon bar. If you don't like lemons, come up with a different fruit, all right? If someone gives you, I don't know, bananas, make banana pudding, make a banana pie, make banana bread, you know, whatever. The point is that someone can hand you something, and it can just be, you know, I mean, say it's an apple, right? You look at an apple, we go to eat an apple, we might cut it up, we might eat it with peanut butter, but there's so many things apples can do, right? Apple jam, apple pie, apple butter. Seriously, everything is limitless. Because it's how we see things. It's how we see that moment. You know, we might pull the banana off the stem, right? And just go, okay, I'm going about my day. But we don't think about all the possibilities the banana has. You are like a fruit, all right? There's so many possibilities to you. And you have the choice of how you choose to look at things. You can surrender to something, to that moment, or to whatever it is that has hurt you. You can try to get to the root of it and try to weed it out and tear it out so that it doesn't affect you as much or at all anymore. Or you can hang on to it and let it fester and let it grow into a big weed. That's not one of the pretty weeds, but the kind of weeds that goes through the garden and strangles other things. And that's what you don't want. Some weeds are pretty. Some weeds are what the bees feed off of. Then there are the dangerous weeds that go through the garden again and try to kill everything around it. You have to decide what kind of plant life you want to be. All right? I know I'm using some really strange terms today, but once you learn how to surrender, you can get into moving into trust. And trust is what I'm working on because, you know, I actually think I think I sell myself short sometimes. I think I'm getting better at trust, to be honest with you. But trusting the moment and trusting the unknown has been hard for me, and that's where my post-therapy healing balance is working on. It's working on just going with the flow. And fortunately, I have enough people around me that teach me how to go with the flow. Sometimes things are out of our control, so we can either be angry about it, or we can just go with the flow and see what happens. All right. So I promised I was going to read the little affirmators card. This one's cute. Little lamp with a flower. Oh, perfect. See? Make like a plant and grow toward the light. Flower and repeat. See? It's surrendering and trusting. The seed surrenders to the darkness of the soil, right? Because it knows that going deep and going within is going to help it grow. Because it is going to take all those things around it. It is going to figure out what it needs and what it doesn't need. And then it's going to get rid of the rest. And the soil is just going to suck it all up and say, okay, maybe a different seed will need something different another time. And that's what we do with our pain. We surrender to that pain to go deep within for the shadow work, to try to figure out what we need to do to heal whatever it is that is within us and inside of us, and to heal it, to figure out how to heal it. And it, like I said, it doesn't always happen overnight. There were some things that I had to keep revisiting, like an onion. And I'd be like, God, I'm back at this again. But then I realized every time I went back to revisit something, it was healing more and more. And it became less and less traumatic, to the point where it's like when I finally will revisit something the very last time, it's like, oh my gosh, like healing my relationship with my mom. Sometimes it could be complicated. As an adult, it was much better. But then I lost her. And that complicated my feelings all over again. And I chose to stick with things that hurt me because that was the only way I knew how to cope with her being gone. And was it the healthy way? Absolutely not. But it worked for me for a while, and it helped me on this journey to figure out what I need to do to go in and grow it. You got to go through it to grow through it. You got to feel it to heal it. So again, make like a plant, grow toward the light, flower, and repeat. So I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful day. I hope what I said today made some sense. Like I said, I'm still getting my sea legs back, so I was kind of just flying off the cuff there, but with the exception of reading what I read. But just remember that. In fact, I'm going to read this one last time before I let you guys go, okay? So again, trust. This card indicates a time where letting go of the human thinking and having faith will serve you. People can confuse surrender and trust, lumping them into the same idea. However, these are different things and require different parts of us. Surrendering often feels darker and like you're submerged, unable to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Its lesson is a teaching in rebirth. The rebirth can only happen when you surrender to winter without expecting spring to come around. It is a lesson in adapting. Trust is a more intuitive process. There is an element of vision, of knowing what is possible, of seeing the potential, and trusting that you will get there when you do not know how you will. It is trusting that the universe or your higher power will provide the resources and illuminate the path if you show up for it. Reflect around your history with trust. Do you have evidence of how trusting can bring about solutions? If not, at what point in the process do you give up? And when it comes to that question, I'm going to just repeat one last time. I wouldn't give up. I would just figure out what the solution is. Because there's always a solution, whether it's the one you want or the one that's necessary. You always want the people. That's the one thing I like about my therapist. Well, my my former therapist, is she didn't tell me what I wanted to hear. She told me what I needed to hear. And I know some people might find that particular type of therapy not for them, but your therapist will go with your flow. She knew. And she knew that because on day one, I told her, I said, I don't want you to tell me what you think you want me to hear, I don't want you to tell me what you think I want to hear. I want you to tell me what I need to hear, because I'm stuck and I need to figure out how to move myself forward. And she was very patient with me because I think she knew, even she told me on my last therapy appointment that you've been ready for a while. And I think she was waiting for me to say that, time was up. But I was too afraid because I was afraid to go it alone. And in a way I'm not going it alone because I do have a lot of people around me. She told me I can keep in touch and let her know my progress and how I'm doing. So, and I will, because she and I were very invested in each other, and that was perfect for me. So just remember those things, okay? And think about it for a little bit. Sometimes when we surrender to what we can't control, we can find the solutions that help us move through it so that we can trust the process and we can trust the unknown. Okay, so I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching. You can follow me on the Aloha Perspective, or you can watch these particular lives live under Shelly Marie Lucas on Facebook at 8:30 a.m. Pacific Time, Facebook Live. All lives are public. They do get shared again to my page, the Aloha Perspective. When I have enough followers there, I'll be able to go live there. But for the time being, I have to go live on Facebook. I also post these to TikTok and to YouTube under the Aloha Perspective. Still haven't figured out how to do that to Instagram yet. And I also tweet them as well. So if you're on YouTube and you see this, please feel free to like and subscribe. Yeah. So anyways, have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much for watching, and I wish you the best in your healing. All right. And remember, surrender to the difficult moments today and ask yourself, how can I handle this? All right. Have a great day.